So the drive of Hume and the two reductive theories inspired by him is clearly to avoid invoking natural necessity. That's the hallmark of what, for obvious reasons, is nowadays called Humeanism. In the last clip of this week, we are considering 4 alternatives to Humeanism. But first, we would like to mention an approach that may seem to constitute an alternative to Humeanism, but that is in fact perfectly well compatible with it. According to the probabilistic theory of causation, a cause raises the probability of its effect. This suggests that causes are neither necessary nor sufficient for their effects. However, as David Lewis has shown, it's still compatible with his counterfactual theory of causation, namely A caused B if and only if, had A not occurred, the chance of B would have been lower than it actually was. A first alternative to both the regularity and the counterfactual theory is singularism. It's a catch-many term, but its general gist is clear. Singularists are trying to capture the idea that what it takes for one thing to cause another depends only on what goes on between the two relata, so the two particular events at hand. It does not matter what is going on in the rest of the universe, or for that matter, in the rest of the pluriverse of all possible worlds. Elizabeth Anscombe, for instance, argues that whether a transaction, say one billiard ball hitting another one, bringing about the movement of the latter, has been generally causal doesn't depend on whether similar billiard ball hitting has or has not been followed by similar billiard ball moving. Although this outruns Anscombe's argument, we may add, nor does it depend on what would happen in a possible world in which the billiard ball hitting didn't occur. In a similar vein, we might respond to the failure of reductive approaches by taking causal necessity to be a primitive relation. According to the simple theory of, or primitivism about, causation, the notion of cause is not further analyzable. A caused B if and only if A plus relevant background conditions necessitates B. On this approach, regularities and counterfactual dependencies may still count as evidence of causality, but they're not what causality consists of. They are at best pointers to what really lies beneath, and that is causal necessity. Another alternative to Humeanism is the process theory of causation. In fact, there are several process theories or physical process theories, but the general idea is that causation is a non-mysterious relation of transfer of energy, energy momentum, or any conserved quantity. In our earlier example, the causal relation between the billiard ball hitting and the billiard ball moving doesn't depend on regularities or counterfactuals. Rather, it's a plain and simple transfer of energy from the first ball to the second. The process theory of causation has benefits. For instance, it can easily deal with cases of preemption. But the theory also has costs, a major one being that it cannot account for causation by absence. If my failure to give them water kills my plants, there hasn't been a transfer of energy, but arguably there has been causation. Finally, we may also adopt, like Leen de Vries of Ghent University, causal pluralism. Fueled by explanatory pluralism and the notion that contextual factors influence the way in which we interpret the cause, de Vries and others argue that causation cannot be described nor analyzed unequivocally, and that no single theory covers cause in all its diversity. In a sense, Aristotle was already the first causal pluralist. And as we discussed at the outset of this week, Aristotle was also tacitly thinking more about different kinds of explanations than about different kinds of causes. And yet, given the fact that no theory of causation is immune to counterexamples, de Vries' causal pluralism is appealing. However, the question of course remains of what different kinds of causes really exist in the world and which conceptions of causation are at best merely indicative.